Hello.
Hello.
Back in the stew with our favorite guest.
What a treat.
What a treat.
We're happy to have you.
Well, I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
We're happy you're here as well.
Okay, everyone's happy.
Okay, so we're back, and today we've decided to talk about a subject that we are all interested in, we all partake in. I would apologize to my work for saying that, but I don't have to because I think they support it.
You can apologize to me for saying partake.
Yeah,
Partake? Okay.
Dabble.
It's an activity that we dabble in, and something that has actually been a medical phenomenon in the last, 5-10 years, probably more recently than that in terms of legality. But today we're going to be talking about marijuana holistically, but specifically in the sense of aid for cancer patients and just medical benefits overall.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think everything from our own histories using it medically and recreationally, but mostly medically. Everything from that to actual suggestions that our dad has got from his doctors to suggestions that we've actually got from some listeners who have said that a specific type of marijuana is specifically helpful for GBM and brain tumors. We're going to cover all of that, but why don't we just kick it off by saying, Dad, what are your thoughts on weed?
Yeah, what do you think?
Well, it's fascinating to me that weed and gambling today are legal because as a kid, we're not going to talk about gambling, but
that's next up.
As a kid,
health benefits of gambling.
Weed was there are none. The weed was it was illegal, so it was something you had to go find and you had to be somewhat discreet about. And as I told my oncologist, who was giving me prescription for going to the weed store in Somerville, Massachusetts, that I said it's not the same as being a kid in Westchester, New York, going into the Bronx, Pittman Ave, and knocking on the window, hoping that nobody shot your head off, because that's how we operate.
But the thrill of it was fun, right?
Oh, as I say, part of the context was I said, this is no fun anymore.
Right.
It's also no fun because of dealing with GBM. But I mean, it's not the thrill as a younger person of getting weed was part of the daring part of it was fun.
The risky behavior.
Yeah.
The risky behavior, yes.
No, it's like, sorry, what were you going to say? Death glare.
I was just going to ask, you say as a young kid, and I'm just curious if you can put a little bit of an age on that.
7.
Well, when I couldn't drive then. When we would drive to the Bronx, probably 17.
Okay.
But we were smoking weed much before that because it was a different era.
Era.
Yeah,
that makes sense. No, I was just curious. Sorry.
No, it's all good. No, it's interesting, the thrill of it. I remember when I turned 21 so badly wanting to be ID'd, but I didn't even get carded that. It was sort of, it's not fun to feel like you're just doing something to not feel like you're getting away with something. There's definitely a edge or a fun to that.
Especially when you're a kid too. That feeling of being
oh, I did it. I don't know. It's the thrill, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that was part of it. I mean, it just, and your parents were super on your case about whether, not your parents, my parents were on my case, and most parents were on their kids' case about not smoking and all this stuff. So I remember saying to my mom, who was no longer living, but when she was toward the end of her life, was prescribed some, weed-based, I think it was a tincture for pain.
Yeah.
And I looked at her one day as she was putting dabs of tincture down her throat. I said, come a long way, haven't we? It's sort of like
it's very full circle.
The table is flipped a little. Yeah, it's just...
they do turn.
Well, I remember she, one time in their house, took too much, I think, and she was sitting on the couch and she was like, I can't feel my legs.
Yeah. No, that was her whole... Well, she was really interested in medical marijuana at the end of her life. Yeah. But for her, which was so funny because all I remember hearing you say is your parents were always so... Not that you guys were yes, smoke weed. You definitely didn't want us to be smoking weed. And I think our sister, our editor, will have a lot to say about that because she was probably the biggest user. of us growing up. But I remember you would say, like, you would go up to your room and your parents would come upstairs. They just didn't get it in a way that you understand it because you did it. Like, I don't think they had ever really been exposed to weed. And what would they say? Like, are you puffing marijuana?
Have you been puffing marijuana?
Like, that's so funny to
me. I used to say, do you mean bong hits? No.
Oh God.
But
yeah, I was really funny then.
You're just as funny now. No, but I remember her taking she was really interested in it, and then she was taking the drops, and I was like, oh, Grandma, how do you feel? Like, are you okay? And she was like, I feel amazing, but I have no idea where my feet are. Like, that was such a funny moment for me.
Such a good line.
But I mean, I guess we can ask just point blank, like, do you think it should be legalized? Like, yes, it takes the thrill away, but what are your thoughts on it as
like that whole new process?
Yes. What are your thoughts on it as like a health treatment, I guess?
Well, I think medically it's been helpful to a lot of people. I don't know if it's helping me. I'm using it. I'm trying.
Well, I mean, your tumors aren't growing.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't think it's the weed
related to the weed. No, but there's a type called Rick Simpson oil that has been proven in many circumstances to help reduce tumors and have an impact. So that's part of my treatment too. I don't know how accurate it is or not, but I take it. And, makes you a little sleepy, which is good because I take it at night.
That is good.
But as far as legalization, I mean, I don't think it should be legal personally, but I don't think that matters what I think.
Yeah. I mean,
you guys weren't so, other than Lucy, weren't so heavily involved in weed. I didn't think as kids.
We weren't. I mean, I definitely wasn't in high school. I remember I didn't like smoke in conclusa. I didn't smoke in high school in the sense of I wasn't getting high in high school. I don't think I was ever actually high. We're just going to be super honest now. I don't think I was ever actually high, probably till like senior year of high school, because I would go to parties and people would have joints, and the gummies like weren't really a thing then.
They weren't. No.
It was like bud and joints, and I would go to parties and like dudes would be passing around joints, and I would be like, oh, I'm so cool. And like, not to quote Bill Clinton, but I wouldn't inhale because I didn't even know how to. And I remember like actually being high for the first time. I inhaled and I was like, oh shit, like now I understand this. And I didn't like it. And I still don't actually like being high. But to go back to your earlier question of like, did Haley and I really partake or dabble in that? I actually really started leaning into using marijuana, and I'm saying it so formally, but because I felt like it was formal, when I was having really severe stomach issues in college. Like, I was about a junior in college, and I was just having like really bad digestive problems to the point where like I couldn't really eat almost ever. Like, I was in constant pain. I was constantly nauseous. And my boyfriend, who I'm now married to, at the time was like, you should try this. Like, you should try to take something, or you should try to take like a micro hit of a joint or a pen or something, because it'll increase your appetite. And it will help with that pain. And it really did. Like,
it does help with nausea.
Yeah. Sure. And I'm not in that point anymore, thank goodness. But there was definitely a point where like I had to have some sort of weed so I could eat food, because I just wasn't like, whether it was anxiety or something, like it just wasn't working for me. And it really helped me in that setting. And I think that's still a moment that I do use it. I don't use it for like de-stress or anxiety or anything like that, but it really is like digestive stomach based for me. And I found it to be extremely helpful for that reason. Mm-hmm. But like, I don't know what restrictions are on being high and driving a car. I don't think that should be allowed. Like, that's crazy to me.
I think you're not supposed to drive under the influence. I think like the DUI thing.
But how could they like test, like, can they breathalyze weed?
I don't think they can breathalyze it, but there's certain tests.
I feel like a lot of people drive high though.
But that's really bad. You're not supposed to drive high.
Anyway, that's like I guess that's my story, my journey, if you will, with pot.
Well, if you ever get pulled over when you're high, I mean, you should just say, I'm stoned. Can't you see I'm trying to get home? That's why I was driving so fast.
I don't think I could drive fast if
That's
I were high.
Someone else's joke.
That is funny.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think it should be legal. It was fun as a kid. I literally stopped smoking weed when I got to college. because I had smoked all through high school, parts of middle school,
Oof.
and
All the weed in Westchester was gone.
we
And the Bronx.
we
Like the
smoked
potato
a lot.
famine.
We smoked a lot, but it was, you know, the end of the 70s into the 80s. It was a different time,
A different era.
a different era. Yes. Why does that entertain
Well, do you
you?
find now with what you're taking, I know you were saying you don't necessarily know if it's helping or not, but you're still taking it frequently. Like I know today, if you don't mind me saying, you sort of felt a bit nauseous at one point, and you took like your little M&Ms that from the
Yeah,
doctor gave you,
yeah.
and they're like just like M&M chocolate edibles, right?
Are the M&Ms Rick Simpson?
Rick is at night, right?
Yeah.
And is that just a literal oil you put on your tongue or
Rick
something?
at
Yeah,
night.
or they're gummies, but I right now have the tincture.
Does it taste good?
Doesn't taste like much.
Does it taste like you're like drinking olive oil? That kind of smells like skunk.
Probably that.
Skunk oil.
Yeah, I think your mother said, "Oh, that stuff smells."
Yeah,
but
well,
I
it's a different
don't.
story.
I don't know.
But it's interesting now, like using the same, I guess not necessarily the same. I'm sure what you were picking up on picking up from like places was probably a little bit different than like the very
Concentrated?
concentrated and like clean oil that the doctors are giving you. But it's interesting to think about like 17-year-old Doug, look at you now, and like for such different purposes. But yeah,
You
little full
also, I
circle.
mean, well, you got into like the dosis, those little pens and stuff for a while.
Mhm.
And that I think was helpful because it wasn't, I mean, at least like when in our experience with them, it doesn't like make you high. I think it's
very
probably
light.
similar to what you're doing now.
Yeah, take the edge off or whatever
Exactly.
it is. But for me now, the Rick Simpson oil is meant to be therapeutic. It helps you sleep a little bit, and then for the middle of the night, I have another gummy they've suggested if I wake up that I should take it.
When you, so you're working with, you quoted or you referenced her on one of our other episodes, what does she call herself? Ganja Queen?
The Queen of Ganja.
Queen of
She
Ganja.
doesn't
You were
call
saying-
herself that. Someone else named her.
But you
Oh.
were saying it should be the goddess of ganja.
Yes.
Sounds better. The alliteration.
Yes. And has that process been helpful, interesting? Like that, having that as a profession,
Yeah.
like a medical
So
weed
interesting.
distributor, like that's cool to me.
Yeah, no, she's a very interesting doctor at Mass General and easy to work with and helpful and knows so much that, you know, she knew about Rick Simpson. She knew about, you know, all the other things that I should take, whether it's the M&Ms that will be a little more uplifting and help cut the edge of not being hungry from chemo. And then there's, you know, the gummies at night that, in addition to Rick Simpson, that help you sleep. It's more natural. I'm good with it. I have no problem with it. Should it be legal? That's not what this is all about.
Well,
No, but you do keep coming back to that.
I have a thought.
My mind is smaller than it used to.
I just think that
Sorry. Oh,
It's not.
I just think that in terms of, I mean, obviously it was different. I didn't grow up in the same era as you, but like the way that I would
weird.
like understand marijuana in high school was like I would like go and try a little bit of it, but like I would be with someone who was bigger than me or something like that, and like I would never be able to control how much I took in, so I'd find myself in situations where I'd be like uncomfortable or like not feel good, and that wasn't really fun. And I feel like now with like the like cameo edibles that like we all like, I don't really use weed unless it's like similar to Emma for like stomach problems. I do a lot for sleep, honestly.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
helpful for me because I struggle with sleeping. But like I've never been the type of person that like would be high during the day. Like that makes me
No.
want to cry in a ball. I could never do it
Or even at night with like,
unless I'm going right to bed.
exactly. Yeah. Like people who can be out
Yeah.
and take a gummy or like, oh, at the end of the night, I'll sit in a circle with their friends
No,
and smoke
no.
a joint. It's like, I'm not going to do that unless you are not interested in ever hearing me speak again. And I also have this weird thing where I get, sometimes if I'm like too high, I get really, really cold. I don't know. They're just weird side effects. Like I don't like to be high in situations that aren't like, I'm about to go to sleep or like
Yeah.
me in the comfort of
Yeah,
my own home.
I think everyone approaches it differently, but that's
Yeah.
I think
I
it
do-
depends on the people too, but I agree.
I do feel like what
Yeah.
you've been doing is definitely like a microdose type situation
Yes.
too. It's not like you're sitting here super high all the time. So I don't want to give that impression.
No, and
no.
I think
I sometimes wish I was, but no, I'm not.
I think that that's sort of like what I was trying to touch on is just with the legality and with the like medicalization of marijuana. It's now you have what
No, you're right. Go ahead.
Oh, it's now like
Big word, Haley.
the the control and the amount. It's not like, oh, eat a brownie and like,
See what happens, right?
haha, rip a bong and see what happens. Like that's when shit gets scary, in my opinion. But now being like I have friends that have never, ever, ever dabbled in weed, but I think they would enjoy it sometimes. So like if we're on like a girls trip, for instance, sometimes we'll be like, okay, you over there, come here. You're gonna take a tiny little bit of the edible. If they won't, we don't peer pressure. But like then my friends are like, oh, I really liked that because like it's tiny and I didn't feel anything except I was a little giggly or like I like felt a little sillier. And it's just like it is. I like the idea of being able to control it that way, but it also is like a can of edibles is like $1 million. Like it stinks.
I am like that exact person with my friends too. They're like,
Yeah.
like they'll call me if they know that I'm going to California for work or
Yes.
something, and they're like, I'm like, first of all, it's literally legal in New York. You can walk down the street,
But it's like different in California. Like
and it's
understand
also
it tastes
cheaper.
better.
Yeah, and they'll be like, oh, like I've really been thinking about like trying to get into weed for sleeping or something like that. So do you think you could like go and pick up me some stuff? I'm like, yeah,
So
but it's just because I don't actually know that much. I just in comparison to a lot of my friends.
No, me and one of my other friends are like that too. And they'll like, our friends will be like, so what do you think? If I take a nibble or should I do a fourth? How much is that? And we're like, you'll be okay.
It's so
I
funny.
promise you. But it is just so funny.
Have you been pushing it on your friends?
No, of course
Well,
not.
I actually have a question.
Yeah.
Because I actually have a lot of my friends' parents, growing up at least, a lot of them would like get high.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we like it was, I mean, not when they had like children, but like when we were in high school and stuff, like that was a thing. Like a lot of them had joints. I remember like I like used one of my friends like parents like weed once, which is probably really bad, but like
really funny.
But like we like
in high school.
Yes, in high school.
Need to know.
And we would, that was like a thing that I was around, and I understood like it wasn't weird to me that parents would like take an edible or like have like a one hitter. That was what you would always use, and like things like that. But I feel like you and mom never really dabbled in it, unless I don't know.
Yeah, I mean we weren't. No.
But over COVID, all of us got high together, which was awful.
Yeah, that actually really kind of sucked. Did you
Yes.
have fun? Yeah, well, with all of us and Will, like the four of us and Will. I don't think Lucy had been home yet. She would have probably coached us through the process a lot better.
She would have. We needed her there.
It was people ate edibles, right?
You did too.
We ate the smallest dose of an edible, and mom
lost her mind.
She was laughing so hard, but I didn't know if she was laughing or crying. Like, I was ready to call.
We didn't know if she was breathing. Like she was like.
Yeah, she was like unwell.
But no, that was funny because I feel like also during COVID it was like, well, what else the heck?
We had nothing else to do.
So we took an edible before dinner, and I remember so specifically, like I felt a little high. Like I don't know, like we took an edible, and mom is sitting at the table, like.
Oh, I was bugging out because she was like, I can't feel it. Do you feel it?
And I was like, well, obviously you do. But then I saw her being so high and like saw you like giggling. And I immediately was like dead stone cold sober. Because you know how that happens like in a situation where like you can't be like the more impaired one. Yeah. Not that like you guys were in danger by any means, but like I was just like, wait, what? Okay, it doesn't happen all the time to me. Usually you guys are the ones sobering up to help me. Like it's like.
Yeah, but the idea, by the way, of parents getting high with kids is so weird and bizarre to me.
Well, no,
I
think of it separately. Like the parents would get high while the kids would like have the party type of thing.
No, but I remember being in college and someone's parents came up from like New Jersey and said,
"It was always Jersey."
Yeah, it's always New Jersey. Even if it's not, you just say that. But they said, "Oh, who wants to get high? We have some joints," and I was like,
so weird.
You're like 40 something and I'm like 17. Why do I want to get high with you?
It ruins
it. So weird.
It ruins it.
I'm all for like parents getting high like together, like go get high with your husband, go get high with your wife, like whatever. But like you don't need to rope in the kids.
No. Agreed. It's not a family activity.
It's not. In
my opinion. No shade to anyone who actually does that. But it's like the cross generation weed usage is not for me.
Well, I actually remember in college my sophomore year, we lived sort of in like a dorm, my girlfriends and I. That was not where all the other people were. Like, so we became really good friends with the other people in our dorm because we were kind of isolated and it was COVID. So we didn't do much. And we became really close with the boys on the first floor. We were on the third. And they're sweet and us would like hang out a lot. And I remember one of my friends in that room's dad was visiting and he didn't live like in the US. Like it was like, he lived very far away, but his dad came for a bit. I remember they were like, oh, do you guys like want to come over? And we were like, yeah, sure. And we went over. And they're sitting in their bathroom, which is where they would smoke, ripping a bong with his dad. My friend and I were like, we're actually going to go back upstairs. Like, I'm not going to partake in this.
But
And he was
that's
like a 50-something-year-old man holding the ball and being like, oh, you want some? And I was like, I'm actually all good. Like, it was really
So
endearing.
funny.
Like, he was bonding with his son, but like, it's just not for me.
and cross culture too. Like I think it's
That's
accepted
true.
differently in different cultures as well. Like it's so new to being legal here. I don't know if that's going to change. Like when we have kids, I have no idea.
Maybe,
But
yeah.
it's just the difference between like your age group. I feel like was the first like widespread like child is not the right word, but the first widespread like adolescent weed users. I feel like so.
Yeah, I mean, there might have been a little bit of a generation before ours, but yeah, no, that's right.
Not grandma and papa
for goodness
until
sake.
It could have been some of them, just not
No,
them
but I used to.
specifically, yeah.
It was funny because I would at one point smoke a bong in my room, blow it out the window, and then go down to dinner. And
Insane.
That's crazy.
The funniest part of that though is I used to tell my sister. There were only my sister and me and my parents, and she sat across from me at the dinner table. My parents sat at the other side, the other ends, and I remember saying to her all the time that I'm high.
So she would freak out.
So she was freaked out watching me
That's awesome.
at dinner, and I would be, acting it up because it was fun.
For comedic relief.
Yeah, and just it would just make her nuts. It was so much fun.
Yeah, you must have been really fun to grow up with.
There's nothing,
yeah.
I so understand there's nothing better than like twisting the knife on a sister.
You understand that.
I do. It's like, they're so funny. It's just like, it's like chef's kiss.
That's great. Oh, well, I mean, I'm happy that you're in a spot right now where it's helpful for you, where it's helping you.
We think so. Yeah.
And it's not, I don't know, like I think there's a stigma or a stereotype that, oh yeah, cancer patients are like getting high, but it's to know, and I was one of my friends actually, so shout out to him who had reached out and talked specifically about the Rick Simpson oil when we first launched this podcast, like to know that there are people out there who have not just found comfort in the medical benefits of this.
Some solutions. Yeah.
Right, but also in some ways some solutions. So, I mean, I think it's the same thing as there's
improvement.
Exactly, but I mean, I think it's the same thing as there are other drugs or herbal remedies or stuff that I think are coming out that have shown that they're helpful for tumor shrinkage or this specific type of cancer. And that's all part of the research that's being done.
Oh, for sure. And there's a lot of stoned mice out there, but
so many high
beyond that, the some of the things that are discovered is that Prozac helps break the blood-brain barrier, so there's more penetration of the chemo, more penetration of things like the Rick Simpson oil. Fascinating, but there's so many smart people working on this.
Yeah.
Hopefully the government doesn't take away so much funding like they claim they will. Not getting political, but I think that there's private funding. There's so much going on.
Yeah.
And you guys have been part of private funding, as have we, because it's interesting that, this is it's a long-term battle, and people, I'm not saying me, but I'm saying it's a long-term battle against cancer, and it takes a lot of money and a lot of people and a lot of brains.
A lot of brains working together.
It's unbelievable how much progress there seems to be and how little progress there seems to be. So
yeah,
it's so crazy too, like just highlighting the outreach aspect that you were touching on, how someone reached out to you about Rick Simpson. The Prozac, someone reached out to me who and sent it to me and was like, hey, like, just so you know, like, this is something I've seen, like, I think it might be working. And I just think it's so interesting that that's like just like people in our circles, but then also just thinking about how much more is out there and how much more is hopefully, at least I'm hopeful, will continue to come out and even be more fine-tuned in the next few years. So that's sort of like the whole bit of this, like the battle is, there's not a cure necessarily right now, but the battle is like, be there for when these things keep coming out and all these remedies and solutions and other words that aren't cure, but similar.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to do, what we're trying to do with the oncologist is buy time.
Yeah.
That's what.
Because time right now is very valuable, especially with all the advancements happening.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Your point's well taken.
Exactly. And I think we feel very lucky that stuff hasn't progressed for you super quickly or at all at this point. And it's sort of like, we know that won't be the case forever. So as long as we can keep that going, and as long as people keep finding new stuff or pre-existing stuff like Prozac, like specific types of weed that can be helpful. Like, I think it's so interesting when doctors find that something that was there all along can solve something totally different. I mean, not to, and this is very different than what we're dealing with, but even thinking about like Ozempic for obesity versus diabetes, like that, it's just stuff that's been around. And I have opinions on that being abused also, but it's like stuff that's been around and been in the sphere, like the medical sphere, can then just be repurposed. I find that to be so interesting. So
yeah, don't forget what I forgot the drug. Sorry, good lord.
but you just said
Viagra.
don't forget.
No, Viagra was created for lung issues. There was a pulmonary issue,
Really?
and
It's not what it's
and
used
someone
for now.
discovered,
No,
someone
it's not.
discovered that there was a secondary use.
I mean, I just think that's all so fascinating, and
There's a lot
and
of
it's
smart
hopeful.
people.
There's
A lot
so
of
many smart people
working on all this stuff, but
and they're probably not high.
Probably not.
You never know.
maybe ketamine. I don't know.
Maybe.
Yeah, all the doctors in a cable. Jeez. All right, that seems like a good point to
does.
wrap it up.
Maybe we should go eat a brownie.
I don't think so, but thank you.
Well, I meant a regular brownie. I want a dessert.
I want a special brownie.
We love you.
I love you. Thank you for the time and the interest in doing this. It's good.
To many more.
To many more.
Anymore.
Many more
Pleasure doing
gummies,
business
many
with
more
you.
Rick Simpsons.